Hello, today is the December meeting for the Manufacturing Compliance Committee. Thank you for joining us. It is the 19th. We're going to start off today with some introductions from two of our new members. Tony, we'll start with you. Tony is also a non-voting member. If you want to do a short introduction of yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tony. I'm currently with Bobcat Miner as a principal engineer, majorly involved in the 5G product. We are very happy to be the second vendor to have the products online after the 3 and 5. Before that, I was working in telecommunication industry for 20 years, been working in Alcatel, Lucent, Nokia, and working on various projects with Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. I'm very excited to join this community on the Web 3.0 crypto. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
And hi, everyone. My name is Ober Chu. I'm from Cytron Technologies. I have been working in what we call makers communities. Very familiar with Arduinos, Raspberry Pi, microbit stuff. I've been doing this stuff since graduation. I think is 18 years ago. I'm from Malaysia, so it's kind of very early for me. Now it's 3 a.m. here. I believe some Asia is around this time also. Of course, I've been very happy to join the community also. I like the concept of Helium because it grow the network and is very useful for the community. So, guys, I'm happy to join you guys. Yeah.
Welcome to both of you guys. Right on.
Welcome to the team.
Thank you.
Yes, welcome.
Thanks.
I also think we could probably move this meeting forward a few hours in the future, perhaps to accommodate people in Malaysia.
Yeah, absolutely. We can adjust the timing if that's easier for everybody.
Definitely.
Did someone want to take a second to kind of explain? I know we voted for this offline, but the flux mining decision that the MCC had, I don't know, Jeremy, if you want to jump off that just to kind of give an explanation for the community.
Yeah, about which specifically? I just missed
sorry, the flux mining decision that was made.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we had a maker approach us, I believe it was Seed, asking, hey, as we reduce the requirements on a hotspot, the computational requirements to support light hotspots, would it be okay if we let users use their hotspots for other purposes, use that unused compute power? And they said they were really interested in letting owners run flux mining nodes, I believe, on their hotspots. And we all looked at it. Our general consensus is as long as it's not competing with or doing some kind of vampiric action, I'm not certain of the best words to use there, against the Helium network and any of the wireless protocols there, that it seemed to be okay, as long as it was user approved, like it's not something that gets put on there automatically, that the owner of the hotspot does get to choose. And again, as long as it's not competitive and doesn't interfere with the ability to do the Helium portion. And that's currently under testing, right, Sophie?
No, it's not yet in the testing process. In fact, I believe they need to put in a proposal.
Yeah, so our decision was that they would have to demonstrate that it wouldn't impact the ability to hear packets, to do POC. So that's what that decision was. I think we all voted for it.
So is this going to be if you have a similar case in the future, does that require a separate audit or voting?
Yeah, what did we decide? I think this is sort of like a case-by-case basis. So
that's correct. And in general, Tony, and to new members, we require a new audit anytime something significant in the hardware changes. We actually have it pretty well spec'd out, but you should take a look and see if there's something in there that, you know, you think should be added. So the answer to the question is, just because one maker is allowed to have dual mining, that doesn't mean that we're automatically going to accept another maker.
But we should be aware it kind of does set a precedence of like what the standard is.
Yes,
I
correct.
agree.
correct.
So
Yeah.
all
I
right.
think
Well, does
Kevin
that,
did a really, oh, sorry, I was just going to say, Kevin did a really great deep dive into the Flux miner.
yeah, definitely. Thank you for that.
That's
Kevin?
right. Well done, Kevin. Good work. New member, strong.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's a good, it's gonna be case by case basis, I believe. And it's more, yes, the system resources of the, you know, the hardware device that they're gonna come up with. Seed had a example of their M4 sense cap, which is, I'm guessing something similar they're gonna be going with. That will be the dual hotspot and a simple walkthrough. But yeah, it's still have to, I guess, produce something during the hardware audit to show where things are at on their next device.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I think that that kind of covers that. The next thing that we have on the status for the agenda items is the 5G maker requirements and the status on that. I know that there are some things that Sophie and Jeremy have been working on to put together that requirement list.
Yeah, that's right. Jeremy and I worked on it, and I've also been working with it with the Freedom Fi team. And so what we have is, I posted the link to the requirements in the channel, and I'll just add it to the agenda as it's a status item. But it is a status item that is mostly done, but in progress. So I'd encourage all MCC members to take a look and let me know, and let Jeremy know if anything sticks out.
Thanks, Sophie. Appreciate it. Okay, so moving into our discussion notes, I guess we can actually start with this. This is going to take place in a call later today as well, but I just wanted to make note of this, that the MCC is discussing the HIP 27 that's currently like being worked on and written up. I don't think it's actually a vote yet, but this is about the secure concentrator. So if everybody, I think, has an invitation. I believe a few members have actually already had the chance to speak to Paul about this, but just wanted to kind of note this, or if anybody had any questions or discussion now before that call, we could also put that here.
Yeah, I just have a question regarding the fee, the $40 DC, right? $40 equivalent DC. Does that every new concentrator need to have this fee to onboarding their concentrator? What about the newer, newer device that has to be on board the miner, and does that add on top of it?
I think the general design is that no, the only fee would be really just onboarding the concentrator. So nothing else would need to be done. No additional fee would need to be paid to the network to onboard.
So let's say we have a new miner with the secure concentrator, right? So miner has its own onboarding fee, right? And so does that add on top of it?
No, this would replace it. What you would be onboarding if HIP 72 passes, there would be engineering changes to the blockchain so that there'd be a new type of transaction, which is to onboard a secure concentrator, and that would replace the add gateway transaction we use now that represents the miner.
Okay, so one fee. How about the existing miner that want to upgrade to it?
Yeah, they would have to, if they wanted to upgrade, they would probably have to pay the fee for the concentrator for onboarding it, because it'd be replacing that miner in a sense. It'd be a new miner.
Okay.
But all of these things are things worth talking about in the HIP. You know, the author of the hip is certainly open to any concerns, and going through how all of this works is certainly worth talking about in the public channel there.
Okay, great. I imagine that there will be some more questions, some more information after this call that's later, that's just taking place after the call.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the next item on our agenda list is we'll move to the maker exit strategy. There's a document that I believe almost everybody on the MCC has had a chance to take a look, and if you haven't, I will add the links so that everybody can take a look. This is around makers who are either leaving the network ecosystem of their own accord, or companies being shut down or anything like that. This is kind of a strategy around it to help support community members who have hotspots. Does anybody have any questions or anything that they want to add for discussion for this?
Just to help prime it, to remind everyone, for example, Syncrobit has filed for bankruptcy, we believe. I'd actually like to see where that has officially happened, and what, in their case, what can we as the MCC do to help all of the hotspot owners who own Syncrobits? How do we support them? Is there something that we can do? What can we do, I think, really, to get out of the way of anybody who wants to step into that role? It's a complicated topic, of course. So, how about this? Does anybody seen any difficulties? Have you heard word of mouth of any companies that would like to step in?
Yes.
And what were the difficulties that they're
Well,
encountering?
I think that the difficulties are really going to be around who is going to pay for this additional labor.
Yeah.
And this has been brought up in the sense that we have on the foundation side priced out, just proactively priced using Belina. I think there was another service that we looked at, and it's just very expensive to take over the customer support and communication with customers. Essentially just that, like the service side of things is very costly. And so for a manufacturer to take it over, another manufacturer to say, take over Syncrobit's hotspots, someone will need to pay for that. And so right now, the possibility of passing that cost on to the customers is very real.
Yeah. And I don't know if there's much that we as the MCC can do to reduce any of those costs.
That's right. I mean, I think as the MCC, just since we have perhaps a high level look at, all like Syncrobit having trouble and people offering to step in, we are seeing these kinds of offers. All we can do is really counsel. And that's really where we're at, is that someone has to pay for it.
I do think one thing we should, maybe it's great that we have Coco here. The one thing we can really do is try our best to help push this final phase of light hotspot rollout. That will make the burden of maintaining a hotspot just a little bit easier, right? Because possibly you can change operating systems. You don't have to have something nearly as heavy as the Erlang miner if it's all gateway RS. That's my only other thought here.
How does that change, like for, let's say, for the Syncrobits, once they're running the light hotspot firmware? And Coco, I know you have to jump off in a minute, and it would be great if you gave us that, that last agenda item about the firmware update. So maybe now is a good time.
I think it's a great segue.
Yes.
What about the firmware update?
What can you tell us about the latest firmware that's been announced and the status of off-chain POC, which
Right.
would be the
So
final thing?
we tagged a release GA, so generally available today for all hotspot manufacturers. This build is required for all hotspot manufacturers to push out to their fleet. It basically updates the hotspot to self-beacon on a 6-hour interval. And anybody that has the same firmware and sees a challenge will issue a receipt to the off-chain oracles. And until the chain variable is activated in January, and this will be early January before the migration, the L1 migration, until that chain variable is activated, the rewards won't be affected. So basically a hotspot is doing dual beaconing, but only rewarded for the on-chain part of it. So what this means is that we're going to get a ton of data in the off-chain oracles for us to process and make sure that they are still working and valid, such that when we activate the chain bar, it'll just seamlessly switch over.
And when that chain bar gets activated, we can effectively shut down the Erlang miner. Is that correct?
Not quite yet, because we have to wait for the L1 transition to fully be enabled so that we can turn off date channel.
Okay. Helpful to know. So we're not quite
We're
at the
not
end of
quite
the
there
tunnel
yet.
for fully light hotspot.
We're not quite there yet, but the plan is to be there alongside the L1 transition.
Yeah. So for me, that's why that's the one thing I think we can just all do is to help push that along whatever we can. Because once it's done, the technical requirements for what you have to do to run a hotspot goes down quite a bit. You don't have to support the Erlang miner. You don't even necessarily have to run Docker anymore, which is a lot of makers do. That can be more simple that way, or actually be more complex. But what I'm getting at is that someone who's technically he's got the technical chops to run a hotspot, a company that can take that over, will have less overhead to worry about, just on their engineering side, and maybe that will help someone want to step in or make it cheaper for someone to step in and take over a maker that has gone up. Any thoughts?
Thanks for the explanation, Jeremy.
Yeah.
And also, just to clarify for any of the community members that are listening to the video after this is sent out, for the light hotspots, so we have a whole bunch that are hardware audited and they're passed, and we're just waiting for approval. So I'm guessing we're, in the new year when the migration happens, that's going to be our next step. But everyone knows that we have had several manufacturers at the hardware audit pass stage.
That's almost correct, Kevin. There are several. There's about 40 manufacturers that have gone through the audit and have passed to the point of checking that they can update their firmware. So each of those hotspots are going to go back through a second step, which should be pretty quick. But yes, I think once the firmware update, or once the firmware is ready, that's going to be the top priority for the audit office. And we should be approving. The MCC will be asked to approve a lot of hotspots in the new year.
Good. Yeah, good. I know there's a lot of questions about that light hotspot, so that gives everybody an idea. Thanks.
Yeah.
Exciting times ahead.
I'm just taking my own notes when I had sent that. Cool. Yeah, Christina, hand it over to you.
Sure. Yeah, I know that our meeting is a little bit short for today. It looks like the last agenda item that we have is around the new hotspots for like 5G mobile Wi-Fi. Whether or not this should be a new HIP, should this be a HIP 19 addendum, how we're going to go about that. And this kind of leads also goes back up into the requirements. Just if anybody has any thoughts or ideas about that.
Yeah, certainly. So Jeremy and I started writing, we started writing up something that could either be an addendum or could be its own separate HIP. My thought around this is that it fits more into the addendum category because it's really following the HIP 19 process with different hardware specifications and a different audit process. But I mean, a different audit, like the process is still the same. Send hotspots, wait a certain amount of time, get an approval, and then go to the MCC. That said, I thought it would be good if we discussed it as a group in case other people have thoughts about this. And, you know, I don't know that we need to vote upon it in this call. It might be something for especially the new members to familiarize themselves with all of this documentation and think about it. But certainly Coco or Jeremy, Nick, Keenan, Christina, Felipe, you know, maybe you have some thoughts.
I'll jump in. Usually my audio is terrible on this, but this sounds pretty straightforward. Just to do it like a 3 checkboxes for HIT 19, like one if it's a LoRa only miner, one if it's a 5G only, and one if it's both of them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but it's even deeper than that, which is like, okay, let's say you check the 5G, you check the mobile box, then what? You know, we really need to spell out the quality for hotspots under mobile. I'm going to call it mobile now instead of 5G to get in the habit of it. Needs to be significantly higher. In fact, there's so much more manufacturer involvement and there's infrastructure they need to maintain, an orchestrator, for example, and a federated gateway. And that we have to also look forward to a scheme where there may not even be hotspots, just pure radios. We're kind of calling this the cloud hosted gateway. You know, that's something we need to get ready for and understand how that works and how we can audit that procedure, which is almost hardwareless. That's more of a software thing. I mean, the manufacturer, of course, will have to get radios at some point, but all they will really do for the end customer is have them hook up the radio to their internet, and that's all that needs to be done, and the rest of it happens in the cloud. So all of these complicated things are the way to run to be a 5G, to be a mobile hotspot maker is significantly bigger hurdle. And we need to spell out all of the things that need to be in there, all of the quality checks. Secure boot is going to be one of them, we're certain, because a lot of the carriers have expressed to us that they will not use any network or radios where they can't be assured that the customer, you know, their end users, their handset holders, people using phones, their data needs to be protected in transit, and they're very eager that we got that. So thanks, Coco. So these additional requirements are things we're going to need to spell out. And Sophie and I are working actively on them. Sophie's actually doing a lot of the work, but I think we should have a really high quality audit process and specifications for what it means to be a mobile gateway.
Yeah, and I wonder, Jeremy, is there any documentation out there about the one that may just be a radio? And just for anyone who's listening to this recorded call, this is something that is probably in 2024.
Good to spell that out.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know for sure, but it's not something that's going to be next month or even in the beginning of next year. But at any rate, for all of us, community and MCC as well, is there somewhere that we can go to learn more about this technology? Or have we not written the docs yet?
For the gatewayless radio.
Yeah, or the radio hotspot.
I've only
Go ahead,
heard
Tony.
of it. Yeah. Tell us.
Tony, you're up.
Oh, okay. So regarding the 5G hardware requirement, I think we can, because right now we only have the Freedom 5 supported Magma, right? So there's some hardware requirement for the Magma core. So we might have used that as our minimum hardware requirement. That's the first point I want to bring up. The second one is scaleweless. I was wondering, is this kind of like against the decentralized concept in like all the traffic or signaling will be going through the clouds, and then you have lose the distributed nature of decentralized network. So that's one thing I want the community to consider. Take that into consideration.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. It probably takes more discussion and technical thinking to see about how the idea of being decentralized washes out. I would say, really, even with the gateway-based radios, the model we have, the Freedom 5 units, still significant portion of that is run by the manufacturers. It's being handled by Freedom 5, especially running their own orchestrator. So that's kind of the nature of the system, but as it is designed right now. Moving to the cloud, it would still be a maker, at least, in charge of their cloud resources. We could maybe have multiple makers under the scheme. So it would still be distributed in that way. But the way mobile's shaping out right now, it is significantly more centralized, I would say, than the IoT network, just by the design, what's required by the 5G, 3GPP consortium and the protocols to interoperate with mobile vendors, mobile carriers. So again, it's something I just want everyone to be aware of. That we're going to be asked, hey, we would like to be part of this ecosystem as a gatewayless vendor. Can we do it? What are the requirements? And it'd be great if we, as the MCC, had some answers to that question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that certainly will put a very high bar on the maker.
Yeah, it's not easy. So.
And just to address Tony's first comment, we have been working with Freedom 5 on the hardware requirements, so they are in line together.
Yeah, but it is, I think, is important for everyone who is excited about it. You should be, if you're on this committee, to learn the whole mobile protocol stack. There's a lot there, and just every piece that you learn helps you get more insight in how it works, because it's a lot more moving parts. And I don't really have an easy answer for where to go.
I have some things that the Freedom 5 team gave me. I've got a list of videos and some documents, so I'll make a thread in our channel. Or
Definitely helpful.
if Christina, if you think it's a good idea, I can just post some of those video links, right? They're just YouTube links for learning in our
That
agenda.
sounds great. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Tony, we welcome any guidance that you can give us as we work through this as well.
Thank you. I will be of any help to the process.
Cool. Well, we skipped over one agenda item here, which is maker firmware updates.
I think that was unless there's something else we need to discuss, I think that was part about that Coco had talked about with the Discord announcement.
Well, I think Sophie had something she put on the agenda.
Okay.
What did I put? I'm not looking.
We're talking about how we can better handle the rollout of mandatory firmware updates, like for the dual plan.
Yes, this is something also I just put here for us all to think about. So with the Australia and New Zealand dual plan rollout, we had a few makers that responded to us that they had updated their firmware, but they had not, which caused engineering a good 3 days of chasing down issues. And so I think one thing we can improve upon as the MCC is the urgency with which we deliver our, when we reach out to makers, we can deliver this with a lot more urgency, like you must update your firmware, or Helium's engineering team will be forced to troubleshoot issues that we shouldn't need to be troubleshooting. But I wondered if anyone had other ideas about this.
Yeah, and I'm especially eager to hear from Tony, what, as someone who does manage engineering outside of a maker, what sort of things do you like to see? How do you like to get our announcements about these mandatory upgrades? And especially if there's problems, what's a good back channel for a maker to tell us, we see your message, but we can't adhere to it in the time frame provided? Just one of the feedbacks we got, one of the pieces of feedback we got.
Yeah, right now, we are depending on the Freedom 5 to provide the firmware update, and it's going through the OTA.
This is specifically the other side about the IoT miner.
Oh, IoT. Okay, sorry.
The LoRa.
But it's more of just a general question as an engineer on the manufacturing side. What is the best way for us to reach you and for you to let us know if we haven't given you enough time? What's the best way to communicate transparently about this?
Can I jump in here with just a kind of suggestion for communications flow?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool. So I think when we're talking about transparently, there should be, whatever it is, the Discord channel. There's like an agreed upon channel through which manufacturers listen for messages from Helium and confirm receipt of that, and then have some period of time to say, hey, we can or cannot do that. So it's, if Helium or if HF or whatever the community is making an unsustainable demand, that's clear, and we change the date. And then if they don't make changes, like they confirm receipt of the message but don't make the changes, then my suggestion would be that Helium Foundation or Nova or whoever's going to do the work has some pre-agreed upon billing rate that's like, this is $1,000 an hour to work on this until we finish it, so that everybody knows upfront kind of what's going on, and it's fair for everyone. So it's fair for the manufacturers in that they can say like, hey, we can't do that in time, and then we push the date back, said no problem, we understand it, we hadn't thought of that. But if they don't do anything in time, it shouldn't be on anyone else to fix stuff for free. So that's kind of my thought process of the flow, is that there's a presentation of information, confirm receipt of information, period for pushback. And then after that period, basically it goes into a standard business relationship. You get paid to do work that you're doing.
So Nick, are you saying a separate channel beside the announcement channel, a channel that's just basically for the manufacturers to be in, that basically where they can see all, and we can see all the read receipts there?
I think that would be part of it. That would be like the totally public, transparent side. But it also is probably important to say to the manufacturers, like, hey, you have to keep an email on file that you are confirming that you're reading, and you also have to confirm receipt of this within 3 business days or 5 business days or whatever it is. Right. So there's maybe 2 sides to it. One side where anyone, anywhere can see it, and then one side where the same message goes out to a specific, and I'm just saying email channel because email seems pretty standard across the board as a communication that everybody can see if it happened or not. Piece. Does that make sense? Or am I
Yeah, that makes total sense. That's a good idea. Then everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, let's talk about what the current channel is. And maybe Christina can help elucidate us. There's things that not everyone here is actually able to see, one of which is actually a Discord set of Discord channels, called the internal external channels. So
Yeah.
How did we do it last time?
Yeah, so for the last one, we do have internal private channels with all of the approved manufacturers, as well as ones that are in like the final stage of their audit. So there's that. Then there is a public channel that goes to all manufacturers. That's just like a read-only channel. And then I also sent out emails then follow-up emails to all of the makers. There's kind of a maker newsletter that goes out with an informal newsletter that has, important information that all manufacturers need. And that usually typically goes out every month, but we did send, I think, a total of 2 or 3 follow-ups for the last update.
So I have seen some makers complain that like, look, we don't check Discord. We see this Discord notice. We finally logged in after 2 months or something. Our engineers log in. Email is better. And I've definitely seen some complain that email doesn't work for them. I'm not certain if that actually did happen, but we do get complaints like, hey, you didn't reach out to us in time, which was a little puzzling.
Sure. So I think we just have a standardized process and say, look, we are going to do formal announcements via email. We will also do them via Discord. So if you're in the Discord, you'll get them. And that allows us to keep the community apprised of what's going on, because most of the community is on Discord. I know that some people aren't, but the majority of it is. And that way the message is just as, I think Christina's been doing this, saying like, hey, emails went out today to manufacturers regarding XYZ. They have 5 business days or, X number of days to respond. And then at the end of that business day, I think we can follow up with the folks that haven't responded, and aggressively follow up with them on any kind of communications channel that we've got open. And then after, X plus 3 business days, put it out and say like, all right, all the changes are finalized and we're going forward with it. No, there's no complaints, and make that super public so that the responsibility should be on manufacturers to kind of listen and pay attention to what's going on in the community. I don't think the responsibility is on the HF or the community to chase down every manufacturer after those announcements have clearly been made.
Yeah, I totally agree. And to make sure we have an up-to-date mailing list, because people come and go, and you might lose contact to the maker.
Yep, 100%.
Good idea.
Yeah, Christina, does that make sense as far as like sending out a blast requiring receipt? And if they don't confirm receipt within X number of days, then you can follow up, and at least you're not following up with everyone, because I'd imagine most of the manufacturers will say, yeah, we got it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the first email I sent out did not require a receipt, and I ended up sending up another follow-up that did. And there were manufacturers who do get back to us to let us know that they got that email notification.
Yeah.
So I do think moving forward, that's a good way to handle it.
And then is there going to be another thread in the Discord, and besides announcement for manufacturers, where publicly it can be tracked and seen by everyone, like we're still waiting for this manufacturer, we're waiting for this response? Then there might be somebody in the community that says it, that has a connection to that manufacturer, says, hey, they're still trying to get a hold of you.
Yeah, typically in the past, when we've had an issue where there's been a requirement, we haven't heard from somebody, we have done that said that we're still waiting on, so and so from this manufacturer, or we have confirmed receipts from these manufacturers. So I think there is a little bit of a precedence for that being handled as well.
In this particular case, the manufacturers, there were, I think, 4 or 5 that responded that they had indeed received the email and that they had indeed updated their firmware, but they had not. So I like Nick's suggestion of charging them for engineering work, but I think a softer approach might be that they didn't understand that it was really imperative that they upgraded their firmware. Updated, I think is the right word there.
I don't know, but if they're saying they upgraded it, that's lying, right? That's like
that's right.
That's when you ask little Billy if he made his bed and he said yes, and you walk in, the bed's not made. Like,
yep, you're absolutely right. And I think we are where we are. We have to move forward from there. But yeah.
Cool. And it seems to me like we can say like, hey, starting January 1st, this is how we'll be conducting business. Like, you got a couple weeks to make sure you have the right email in. I know it's the holiday and the rest of that, but it's not that hard to get the correct email in.
Right.
Yep. It'll be a longer conversation. Like, what do we do? If maker says they did everything and they didn't, I would like it to be a little bit more public. If a maker says they did something and we find out they didn't, and we share it with the public. Hey, these are the makers who said things are ready. If you're having issues, talk to your maker. You know, I think
Yeah.
that's another carrot or stick that can be put out there.
That might be
something
something
could
that
be-
foundation
yeah.
could host, right? Like a
Yep.
graphical thing that's not a Google sheet, that's super easy to go to a web page. It's like status.manufacturer or whatever it is. .helium.
Yeah. So there's actually a manufacturer. We have that that status tracker for the last year that we've been using and the previous year. And there is a new directory that I've been working on putting together that will be public. It's for the next year. So starting in January, and we can definitely add a section that says, you know, for this update, this manufacturer said, yes, they updated it, or no, they haven't replied.
Mhm. I think that's the final piece that can help.
Yep.
The other thing to do on that is to also make sure that the manufacturers have their contact information on that page. So if they say they've done it and they haven't, or you know their hotspots are not working, it makes it really easy for the consumers to know exactly where to go. Because you don't go to Helium Foundation. It's not on the foundation to manage a hotspot. It's just on us to say, hey, here's what you guys need to do. If there are any problems, can we help fix it? But at the end of the day, like the one that's got to fix the hotspot is the hotspot manufacturer. It's got to maintain it. It's them. And so need to make sure that there's really easy way to contact them.
Oh, I thought of something that is not, just speaking of this, we have a maker that does not, that is charging for firmware updates.
Yes, I was wondering if we were going to talk about that.
We do have an update. They did answer via email. Do you want to go into that next?
We can, yes. There was something in the email that explicitly asked that this wasn't shared public. So I'm not sure what we can and cannot say other than that they did respond.
I think that's it then. Yeah, we can talk about it internally, and if there's something to release publicly, let's do that.
But yeah, as of right now, they responded to it. That's pretty much the only update that I have.
So we'll put an announcement out to the community once we discuss it a bit more.
We certainly can. I think the announcement right now is just that they replied.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't see that email, so I don't know if we have a link to that email. I didn't heard about it internally on our stuff, but I didn't see that response or anything. If you guys have that shared.
Yeah, it's not a public email just because it was between the foundation and the maker. That's why I don't think I CC'd everybody on that.
Okay.
But can definitely provide an update about that.
I think the one thing we can make public, sorry, I couldn't jump in before on this, was that it's probably reasonable to start expecting to pay some kind of either monthly or annual like hotspot maintenance fee to the manufacturer for keeping up their dashboard. And I know that's not fair and that like nobody likes that and etc. But I think that could be something that the MCC says like, hey, we think this is probably the way forward. And this was unsuspected at the beginning, but this is probably how it's going to go. Just so the community has an expectation like, okay, I don't like this, but you don't always have to like the food that gets put on your table. You just got to eat it.
No, absolutely. That's a great point. And I think that the issue actually came from is where we have the ethics document where it's just required that the manufacturer and the maker who's selling this discloses that so that we don't have community members who purchase a product and then are told, you know, a few months later, a year later, that now all of a sudden they have to pay for something. I do think it's reasonable to expect there to be a maintenance fee annually. But I think the issue really was that this wasn't disclosed beforehand. That was
Right.
where the concern came from.
Yeah, and then the community is going to be probably, of course, like Nick said, a little bit upset. You know, the existing hotspots over the last couple of years that that basically purchased, and then all of a sudden they got to pay a fee, or did they pay a minimal fee? The maker decide on that compared, and then they disclose going forward that there will be a fee for new customers. Anybody purchasing new hotspots going forward, they definitely are going to be getting a fee, and then previous ones maybe there's a smaller fee. But yeah, it's something I think eventually is going to probably have to happen.
So-
yeah.
Christina, so you're saying if they disclose that there's a fee, that's acceptable because the buyer knows what they're getting.
Precisely.
they-
Yeah, that's how the ethics document is currently written, that the maker just needs to disclose any premium fees at the time of purchase.
So what happens if a maker 2 or 3 years in then needs to charge an update fee? Does the ethics document cover the life? The ethics document covers the life of the product. So I wonder if we should amend that to read, or what does the MCC think about the life of the product versus 2 years of the product or 3 years of the product? I don't think it's realistic.
but-
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I think it's practically reasonable to say, like, look, this gets updated on an annual basis, and your first year is covered for whatever your price is. But every year, as things change, as prices change, the rest of it, like the one side of me, I don't like it because we're covering for manufacturers who probably knew this up front, and they're just like, okay, cool, we can get away with this. But on the other hand, the practical side is like things aren't free. And so the expectation should be set that, hey, if you're going to get this hotspot and you're going to be running it, and someone else is going to be making sure that all the software is updated over the life of that, I can't think of an electronic device that I've bought that doesn't have something like that. Like, either the firmware kind of runs out and you're stuck with old stuff, or you pay to upgrade. That seems pretty standard in the industry. Am I missing something there?
No, that kind of really hits all the things that I've been thinking about internally. That it's understandable this is going to happen. I think the real big question is, what do we do with all the makers who didn't publish anything but will have to start charging a fee? Maybe that is part of the warranty, like, you can't do it during the warranty period.
I think that makes sense, Jeremy. And that's also how other products work. Like when you buy, for example, a hard drive, if you don't purchase the extra thing that's $59 or whatever, your warranty is good for a certain amount of time. And it's not usually as long as 2 years.
Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
have an easy answer.
Now, I wonder if we can just kind of just spitballing it here, say like, hey, starting January 1st, 2024, so next year, this whatever restriction is lifted for all original manufacturers, and going forward, every new manufacturer has to declare what they're going to do, and that way, I think it gives everybody enough time to figure it out, and they can take a hit on a year.
Yeah. I think we're going to have to do something like that.
I mean, I feel like 2024 for manufacturers that were selling hotspots in 2020 is, I mean, at that point, the hotspot might be old technology.
Well, it sounds like we have enough of an idea that we do, need to take action on this. And
I think we have to set a path forward that makes sense. And even if it's not kind of fair in line with what originally got sold, it also has to make sense so that manufacturers can continue. Because if the option is to kind of go bankrupt or charge money, it's silly for us to be like, well, looks like you're going bankrupt.
Right.
You can't contribute
Yeah,
to the network
100%.
anymore.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem right.
Yep. Yeah, I like the suggestion of 2024. I just wonder if we would make it more like June of 2023.
Yeah, that might be a good idea, being that also, like ready for light hotspots, I would hope by then too as well. So that might be better.
yeah, I'm not a fan of setting the date right now in this meeting
No.
what that is, but it certainly can be moved around.
We could also ask manufacturers for guidance on it. Like, hey, what's going to work for you guys? I know all of you are going to say, you can't do anything until 2030, but here are your two options. Which one can you mean?
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea.
And in my dream world, it'd be even cooler if, I don't know how this would work out, but it'd be great if the market could also solve this too. It's like if you buy a hotspot and then you're faced with this, the manufacturer wants to charge you a fee after the warranty runs out, you could maybe go with another warranty program, so run someone else's software and you start an agreement with them and it's cheaper than what the maker does, people aren't forced into having only use that maker. But that is a longer technical problem, but I would love it to see that way. We
That
drive
ties
the
into
cost
the
down
same-
over time.
That ties in the same problem we have with Syncrobit, right? Is that they're
Yep.
gonna, it's like this is the exit strategy, not just for makers, but exit strategy for customers to exit from one kind of mini ecosystem and enter another, to move from Syncrobit to XYZ. So it's probably something we should kind of support and put some resources or something behind,
Yeah.
because that makes the whole system healthier. Keenan, I saw in the chat that you said that fee should be known up front. Was there anything else you had on that?
Maybe we've gone past it a little bit. It was just referencing if you're allowing makers to have a fee, is that going to be like $25 for the year? Is it going to be $400 for the year? Is there like a set limit? Just where does that number come from and what will be allowed? Yeah, that was just my thinking.
Yeah, like a yearly fee and stuff, and maybe a more minimal fee for existing hotspots, and then new hotspots going forward. New customers might pay a little bit more possibly, but something manufacturers would figure that out.
Right. I think it's just for existing hotspot owners that bought 2 years ago. What will that be? And I understand where manufacturers are coming from. They need to have their labor paid for. I think it's just a very tricky thing to set an amount.
Yeah, I was hoping we were not at all mandating an amount in our decision. That would be a nightmare.
No, that let the market decide that.
Yeah.
No, that's fair. If they're all kind of doing it, I understand that. If it's just like one or two makers, then they can kind of play monopoly, right? Yeah, I'm not in favor of setting anything. Yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that exactly.
No, but I hear your concern. You don't want to
Yes.
see something where a maker, really popular maker, says it's $400 a year, and that's your
And that's
only
it,
choice.
because you have no other choice. Exactly. It's either they stay online or they go offline.
Wait a second. Let's think that through though, because I think we've talked to Belena, and without giving their numbers away, I don't think it's 400 a year. So this like opens up if I'm understanding it right, opens up a market kind of slot for someone to come in and say, hey, I'm not going to make hotspots. All I'm going to do is support hardware, and I'll do it for, X number of dollars per year, and you can pull you can transition over to me at any time. Like it really helps kind of competition in the sense that, with Verizon and T-Mobile and the rest, like with your cell phone plans, you can, as long as you're not locked in, you can switch over at any time. That's pretty good for the consumer.
Yeah, but what do we do in
Yeah,
case
and
where
we-
a maker is? Go ahead.
I was saying we can, I believe we shouldn't put a value, but we should reserve the possibility of making a regulatory limit if we notice that any manufacturer tries to increase or to gain monopoly of that part.
Yeah, and the point that I was trying to make that fits somewhat in here is that it may not technically be possible for someone else to take over a fleet. It could be that there's hardware keys or something that prevent the firmware from any other firmware from being run. So this dream that like Belena could step in, and we have to figure out, we have to be prepared for that, because we haven't mandated that manufacturers run hardware such that the firmware can easily be replaced. It is the case in many of these that it can be. And that does open up, a future venture being able to step in there with ease and taking over. But we should be prepared for some, like a major maker who has effectively locked the hardware into a certain set of firmware, and it just won't be the option for someone else to come in there and offer a lower fee. So yeah, we could, I hope we can just punt this one down the line. But I think coming forward and changing ethic stock and saying, starting at some date, we are going to allow makers to adopt this scheme of charging for firmware updates or something for existing hotspots. We know it's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's open up a time for manufacturers to weigh in on that, and then vote on it and put out a date.
Yeah.
Cool.
That brings us to the end of the agenda. So unless anybody has anything else to add, I think we're all set here.
Right on. Thanks, guys.
All right. Have a happy holidays, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Love you
Merry
all.
Christmas. Enjoy
holidays.
family.
Happy holidays.
Bye-bye.
Christmas, guy.
Happy
Bye.
New Year.
Holidays.
Oh, that's Steph.
Bye.
See ya.
Thank you. Bye.